Hi everyone and welcome. When my friend Tabby brought her delicious American Chop Suey to work for the first time and I tasted it, I was truly wowed by it. I came home and I thought I would duplicate it, but it didn't come out at all like hers. So when I asked her for the recipe and she gave it to me, I was truly honored. And as I was reading it, I noticed that the secret to the best American Chop Suey I ever had in my life is in the way she prepares it. And she starts by frying 1 pound of ground chuck, which is 80% lean and 20% fat. So I'm going to fry it in my large hex-clad frying pan. My frying pan is preheated on medium heat. So I'm going to add the meat. Break it up and fry it. I increased the heat a little bit. I'm now frying on medium high. The meat is starting to brown and it's back on medium heat. Brown meat means flavor. Okay, so the meat is brown now. I'm going to turn off the heat and drain the fat. Then I get a paper towel and absorb as much of the fat as I can. See how soaked that is already? I'm going to need another one. I believe it's mostly gone now. I'm going to set it aside. Now let's talk about the tomatoes. Her recipe calls for 2 28-ounce cans of whole peeled tomatoes and a 14-ounce can of whole peeled tomatoes. And she specifies that it's not plum tomatoes. But I couldn't find a small can of whole peeled tomatoes, so I'm going to use 2 whole cans and half of the third can. And she also says on the recipe that you must break it up in the pan with a spoon. But since I'm not a big fan of chunky tomatoes in my sauce, or chunky onions or chunky green peppers, I am going to drain the cans in the big bowl, and I'm going to get the tomatoes, put in another bowl, and I'm going to chop them up very small. So here we go. Shake it to get the juices out of there, and into the bowl it goes. And I'm going to chop those tomatoes up. When I started taking the tomatoes out of the can, I noticed that they looked a lot like plum tomatoes, but I think it's going to be okay. Since I was at it, I went ahead and cored them and tried to strain as many seeds as possible. This is a 2.5 quart bowl, and it looks like it's 2/3 of it full. I'm going to go ahead and put the juice from the cans in with this smaller bowl. And I'm going to reserve it. I preheated an 8-quart stock pot on medium heat. And I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of olive oil. I'm using this Portuguese olive oil because it's mild. But you may use canola oil as well, because canola is neutral in flavor. So you may use any oil you want, I guess. We'll see. This is a tasty olive oil, so I think this will be okay. The oil is heated, and here I have 2 large yellow onions that I finely chopped. And she writes in a recipe that you may chop into 1-inch square pieces, but I don't like it chunky, so I chopped very fine. And last event she had at her house, she also chopped everything very fine. So her brother and I were happy to see that because we really prefer chopped like this. So I'm going to go ahead and add that to the pan. And here I have 2 large green bell peppers that I chopped finely as well. If you want to see how I chopped this so fine, you may watch my Brazilian beans, rice, and vinaigrette video. And I'll put a link in the description and also at the end of this video for you to see. So here are 2 large green bell peppers, finely chopped. And we must sweat the onions and green peppers together In the recipe, she says that in order to keep the onion and green peppers from burning and keep them steaming well, you must add a little water every now and then. So I have 2 cups of filtered water here next to me, and I'll be adding a little bit at a time as the onions and green pepper start to dry out a bit. Because we're trying to cook them until they get soft, but not let them fry, just steam. I didn't really have to splash the green peppers and onions with water a lot. I only used about a 1/4 cup of water to sweat them. And now I am ready to add the fried ground chuck and stir. Now I'm going to add the tomatoes. And stir. Look how beautiful this is getting already. Now on to the seasonings. The recipe calls for a lot of garlic salt. I don't know how much that would be, so I'm going to start with 1 tablespoon of it. It also calls for a lot of onion salt. I don't have onion salt, so I'm going to do 1 tablespoon of onion powder, and later on I will adjust the salt. It also calls for a lot of Italian seasoning. So I'm going to put 1 tablespoon of Italian seasoning in my hand and go like this. I don't think I'll use quite the entire tablespoon, so half a tablespoon will do, I think, for now. And stir. Starting to cook it down. I'm going to increase the heat a little bit, and I'm going to taste it. The recipe also specifies that if it's not salty enough for your taste, to add more garlic salt. I believe it needs a little more garlic salt. So I'm going to add another tablespoon of it. And stir. And I'm also going to add a little more Italian seasoning. Half a tablespoon. So it's a total of 1 tablespoon of Italian seasoning. I'm also going to add another tablespoon of onion powder. And stir. I'm going to add 1 more tablespoon of garlic salt. It's a total of 3 tablespoons. Mix it up and let this boil down for 30 minutes on medium heat. While the sauce cooks, I'm going to boil some water to cook the macaroni in. Here I have a large sauce pot that I filled halfway up with filtered water. I'm going to cover and leave it on high heat so the water can boil faster. Every once in a while, give your sauce a little stir and taste it. If it's not salty enough for you, add a little more garlic salt. I tasted it and it tastes pretty darn good to me. The pasta water is boiling and I'm going to add a lot of salt and stir that salt well. I am going to add 1 pound of elbow macaroni to this pot. Stir the macaroni well until the water comes back to a boil so the macaroni won't stick together. Time to stir the sauce a little bit more because it's almost time to add the macaroni. The macaroni is cooking in a good rolling boil right now. I'm going to turn it down just a little bit now that it's going again. I'm going to cook for about 8 minutes. I don't want it to cook completely, just al dente, because it's going to finish cooking in the sauce. The macaroni is cooked al dente. I'm going to drain it. I turn the heat off, I drain the macaroni, and I'm going to return it to the pan. I also removed it from the heat because you know how it is with electric stove. You still have some remaining heat on high, and I don't want it to keep cooking it. The sauce has cooked down a bit. I'm going to stir one last time, and I'm going to add 2/3 of the macaroni and stir. I think 2/3 of a pound of macaroni are more than enough because she emphasizes on the recipe that if you add too much, the macaroni may absorb all the sauce. And I don't want that to happen. I want to have a little sauce to be able to dunk a little garlic bread in if I want to. So 2/3 of a pound to me are more than enough. And what a beautiful dish this is. Not to mention delicious. You are going to be hooked just like I am. Now I'm ready. Put in the casserole dish. Look how gorgeous this is. Beautiful. And it's not even all of it. I'm going to add Parmigiano Reggiano like that. And I'm going to garnish with a little chopped cilantro leaves. If you want to add parsley, basil, anything you like, that's great. Is that gorgeous or what? There's a lot left in the pot still. It feeds a big family, I'll tell you. I'm going to put some in a bowl for me. Yum. So wonderful. A little Parmigiano Reggiano, a little cilantro. I love my cilantro. Delicious. Something so simple, yet so tasty. Not many ingredients, really. We had a lot of American Chop Suey left over, so my husband and I loaded up some trays and we're going to freeze dry it because this is the next day now and we already ate all we could eat out of it. It's a lot of food and it's really cheap to make and feed a large family, but it's just my husband and I here, so I'm going to freeze dry it. That should make a lot of freeze dried American Chop Suey. I spread 3 and let's say 1/4 thin layers on the trays and the freeze dryer is ready. The American Chop Suey is freeze drying now. We have never freeze dried American Chop Suey before, but we think it might take about 24 to 30 hours for it to freeze dry, even though I spread it pretty thin on the trays. We'll see. We love our freeze dryer. We often freeze dry meals for our cats. We freeze dry cooked chicken breasts for our dogs and cats. They love it. So this cycle is complete. And here it is. Says it's ready. And my husband's going to do a moisture test to make sure it's dry. My husband was a paratrooper. He has this survivalist thing going, which I'm all on board with, especially nowadays. You gotta harvest right. Wow, I really love it. Yum. Give me some of that yum, yum, yum. Yeah, that's a great little snack. You can take it anywhere with you and eat it just like that. Very tasty. We have 7 meals in a bag and they can be stored for up to 20 years and they will never get freezer burned and they can be stored anywhere. And they're lightweight too. You can take them anywhere with you when you travel because there's no moisture in them. If you don't harvest right, you're harvesting wrong. I hope you give this recipe a try because it's truly a keeper. Thank you, lady, for the recipe. And thank you all for watching. I'll see you next time.